Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot. Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot.
Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivecchio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, if how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivecchio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University. Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you. Hello and welcome to World Inkers Network. We have reached episode 281. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. Thanks for joining us on the show today. If you're viewing, subscribe to our YouTube. Today we have Carmen Bugan, who is the George Orwell Prize Fellow. She's the author of 5 poetry collections, including Lilies from America, New and Selected Poems, a PBS Special Commendation, a memoir bearing the typewriter Children Under the Eye of the Secret Police, a BBC Radio 4 Book of the Week, Waterstone's Book Club Choice, a monograph on Seamus Heaney and East European poetry and translation, Poetics of Exile, which was placed on the list of essential books for writers by poets and writers, and a book of essays on politics and poetics, poetry and the language of oppression. She was the 2018 Helen DeRoy Professor of Honors at the University of Michigan, a fellow at the Hawthornden International Retreat for Writers, and taught at the Université de Fribourg of Switzerland and at the University of Oxford, while she was a creative arts fellow in literature at Wolfson College. She has a doctorate in English literature from Balliol College, Oxford University. Her work was translated into Italian, Swedish, and Polish. She teaches at the Gotham Writers Workshop in Manhattan and occasionally at the Poetry School in London and the Geneva Writers Workshop. Her book of poems about the pandemic, Time Being, will be published this March. Welcome to the show, Carmen. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's wonderful to be here and to be the 200 and what was it, the number? Over 200 episodes.
281, I believe.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's quite a long running show. So I appreciate your time on the show today. And so, tell us a little bit about your father. I'm really curious about this BBC special and how this symbolically kind of construed to be the protest that he conformed or that he did, how that can reflect the nature of how symbolic, language and language itself can represent the capacities of freedom, in your opinion.
So I grew up at the latest period of the Cold War in Romania in the 1970s and 80s. And because the consciousness of the people was overrun with the propaganda that was coming from down high, from the communist government. Words had a specific currency. They became as powerful as weapons in the minds of the people, but also in the minds of the government, who was doing all the brainwashing. And so in this context, my father decided to take up the abuses of the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, he decided to take them up by typing anti-communist manifestos and pro human rights manifestos at a typewriter. And because the typewriters were illegal, you had to register your fingerprints. You had to have the police register the machine, as well as your fingerprints. And so they could trace anything they could find, in a country. If they found anything they didn't like, they could trace them to the person and to the typewriter. And so my father and my mother bought two of them. One, they registered it with the police. The other one, they managed to buy, it was a clandestine typewriter. Mm-hmm. So they typed at night pro-democracy pamphlets, and they buried it in the ground at the back of the house during the day. So I have come to look at words and at language as really important tools, both of oppression and of freedom. And then the book that I wrote on poetry and the language of oppression really explains the journey that I've taken as a writer from that awareness. It started with my father's typewriter, the journey that I've taken to write myself free from surveillance and from being oppressed, from being afraid of what would happen to us. My father spent 12 years in prison, so it was a very difficult time for the family. We lived under surveillance. And what it takes, what does it mean to be free in language? I've been exploring over the last 30 years since we immigrated to the United States, the whole idea that language is also a resource that one can draw in, and a source, a straight out source of power, as important as water is to our bodies. It's always there. The language is always there. It always comes from people. It circulates everywhere, and it's through the words that we live our lives. So I've been really focusing on the sense of just taking in the language of the world, and for me, taking the English and really getting that sense of inner freedom. It's a mind changing experience to be able to look at language in this way, where it's an empowering tool that you have, as much as it is an oppressing tool for the governments who enact oppression on people in different ways.
That's an interesting response. Is there a difference between a poetry of exile and a poetry of resistance?
Yeah, I mean, they're part and parcel of the same thing, because a poetry of exile is part of the resistance to oppression. People move in order to flee oppression, or to regain their freedom, or to gain a new sense of freedom. But the poetry of exile is a poetry where you live in two places at once. Every experience you have in a new language, in a new country, is lived against the previous experience in your country of birth, in your language of birth. So it's a looking both ways experience, the one of exile. And many people, are sort of condemned to a kind of, perpetual nostalgia, and melancholy, because they are uprooted. That's part of the exile. The resistance part is also what you're saying is the other side of that. When you overcome your nostalgia, but you look forward to life in another language. And it's a resistance to feeling powerless. It's a resistance to that consciousness of being a stranger in a new place. And so in that sense is a resistance to everything that stops us from achieving our full potential as human beings. And of course, as poets, the question is, how do you achieve your full potential in language? That's the question that drives every writer. How do I get ahead in language? What do I get from language? What's my relationship with the language, and how do I really make it mean something?
So how does it feel to be sort of transferred from Romanian to English, to writing in English? Is there a different feel for you and changing language and communicating with a sort of a different nationality or a different audience?
Yeah, so I mean, the aside from the technical part of having to learn another language and the process of self-translation as a human being that you go through, that you start to think of yourself. Well, I started to think of myself as American in the process of learning, or as a displaced Romanian in a process of learning. And now that I'm getting much older and I have kids, I'm also turning back a bit more with a bit more sympathy and a bit more affection towards Romania. As the older you become, the more you appreciate the different roots that you have, rather than choosing, as you do when you're hot-headed and young and you say, I just want to look ahead, I don't want to look back. So I'm becoming more inclusive and more appreciative of both languages in my life. But yes, there is the complexity of self-translation first. How do you become, what is your sense of identity in another language? There is also the sense of excitement that you can communicate in another language. I mean, it's a great sense of achievement that you have once you achieve fluency, and once you're able to move to yet another stage, which is speaking with a new audience. I mean, the audience of other exiled people, of to the diaspora from everywhere in the United States, because this is a country that welcomes everybody from everywhere, but also to people who are native here, to the Americans who might not have traveled, and the sense that I would bring them the news from another place. And in poetry, the smells of the food from another country and the sound of the language of another country, all of this comes in, as just as you go into someone else's house and you bring a bouquet of flowers or the cake that you make at home and say, this is my offering to you, to your culture, to your language. And what the poets do, what the writers do, they offer a story, they offer new words and another understanding of the world, which obviously it could not have been shared because of geography and history. So there is a sense of, I think of poets as diplomats, to be honest with you. I mean, they do part of that very important work in a world community to bring the cultures together, to bridge the differences. So
that seems to be really what poetry should be doing, or should work towards, is bridging cultures. And I mean, language is the heart of who we are and how we communicate. I mean, obviously that's one of the major factors in bringing people together, is being able to command language in a way that's both dignified and intellectual. And at the same time, we have the degradations of languages and all these other things that happen to that the poets are supposed to sort of kind of restore language to its natural dignified state. And that's kind of my aesthetic, to bring it back to a kind of an aesthetic appeal, bring it to something deep and meaningful when it's being debased, and in a lot of ways, and then in other ways it can be something that reaches across as you said, reaches across countries and reaches across cultures and finds the commonalities and so forth, and tries to bring people together. I'm curious, like, what are some of the themes you write and reflect on that you go back to in your work mostly?
The particular themes that I've been writing about really have been the childhood. I often return to the childhood and to the most important memories that I have had in childhood, both in terms of my father's and my parents' protest and resistance to oppression, that is, political oppression, but also it turned into a personal, into a family oppression. My poetry is about the effect of state on family. I really deal with that in my work. And then I have a lot of themes of nature. Nature has come to represent a source of comfort. And I think that it has been the easiest thing for me to relate to when I came to the United States. So I made a very quick transfer. The Black Sea in Romania was very quickly transferred to the Lake Michigan, because we went to Michigan. very quickly finding those parallels. You know, I found the cherry orchards and the apple orchards in Michigan that reminded me of the apple trees and the cherry trees back home. The way the earth lives and breathes and is seasonal has been very important and really, really crucial to the way I've felt that I fit in as as someone who writes in English. I was able to transfer that sensibility, that closeness to nature, and the ways of the land. And then, of course, you know, meeting people here who appreciate very much nature and are concerned about it. That has been one of the themes. And then there's another big theme really has been the sense of love that people feel for each other, the commitment and the love of family. You know, staying close to people through difficult situations. I've been very deeply writing about parents and children, about my parents, about the way they've lived their lives here, about the way they look back on their lives, you know, back in Romania. So these are the themes: family, nature, love. There's a sense of spiritual life as well. You know, I grew up as a Christian Orthodox in a Marxist society, so that had a lot of dualities to it. You know, on one hand, people worshipped and believed in God. On the other hand, you know, were punished for believing in God. And so there's that whole duality of there. And here being able to, you know, my parents built their church in Grand Rapids, Michigan with a Romanian community and have been keeping the rituals, for all the rites of passage that we do and the rituals of the year and the changing seasons, you know, the Easter, the Christmas, all of these things that, you know, we all relate to as Christians. So that imagery comes a lot in my poetry as well. The sense of the presence of the spiritual in life that comes very much so in here.
Beautiful. I love that quality, like especially when you talk about nature and the spiritual within nature. And you know, there's a lot of things to be looked at in humanity that are missing. You know, there's a lot of cruelty, but there's also so much good. And it seems like we're fed the narrative that we're bad all the time through the media. The media is always telling us what's wrong with everything and critiquing, you know, all of, you know, human people, you know, us as people. It seems like we're just degraded in so many capacities by, you know, whatever force it is. And I think, you know, just, you know, this idea that you're presenting of spirituality within nature and you know, the humanity, it's beautiful. I mean, because there is something, I think, deeper than what we see on the surface level. And there's something that we can be in touch with that brings out our natural dignity as people. And I think that's something we lose a lot when we get lost in these conflicts. And, you know, so I'm curious, are you concerned with, you know, some of the divisiveness in this country right now, some of the hostilities and you know, it seems like a lot of stuff is being just torn asunder so much over time, and you know, by the pandemic and everything else going on. Is that something that concerns you, and do you think poetry can help alleviate some of these difficulties?
Yeah, so I've been very concerned. I mean, I lived in the United States for 7 years before I returned to Europe to do my studies at Oxford, and then I stayed there because I got married. So I lived there for 16 years, all in all, in Ireland, in England, then in France. And so I returned from Europe in 2016 here to a completely changed country. I mean, the country that welcomed us was, you know, George Bush country, and we loved it. We were very grateful. And then, you know, obviously, you know, I've voted for Clinton and Obama, you know, while I was here and then away, and then we came back to Trump. And so noticing the change, it's been very difficult for me, but nothing would take my sort of love and commitment and gratitude. And I've been, you know, one of the poets who has been going around during the Trump years and during the pandemic saying, till the day I die, I will feel grateful to the Republicans of Grand Rapids, Michigan, who welcomed us. I mean, just because the country is becoming polarized, it doesn't mean that when you go deep inside people, you won't find and you won't tap that common humanity that will bring us across divided lines. It doesn't matter if you're Trump or Biden, in a sense that if you could tap where, and this is, you learn from nature, if you could go back to that spring of hope, if you go back to the place where people feel compassion for each other, I think you could bridge all the differences. Of course, a poet would say that, and people would say, yeah, this is naive. But I do believe on the ability of poetic language to talk heart to heart about political discontent. I think that there are ways in which poetry, as an expression, because it's expressive, because it allows you to bring out the best in language. Poetry is praised for beauty of sound, for beauty of images. Once you tap into that, you bring to the table the goodwill. And this is what I haven't seen in United States for a long time. But when I see it, I love to tap into it and run with it and say, this is the spring from where all humanity comes from. That sense of, I've written a poem about the January 6th storming of the Capitol. And I was saying that, we need to go back to the sense of gratitude for being alive, gratitude that we're not alive by ourselves. I mean, what I eat today depends on what somebody brought from God knows where in this COVID-stricken world, all the way to the supermarket. And it depends on, the money that I get from teaching, where my husband brings home from his work. And it depends on so much trust in the earth itself to grow it. How can you not be aware of that and think that you're completely by yourself and you could rule the world, or you could be greedy? How can you not see that, sense that everything takes the mystery and the hard work together? And how can you not have that sense of wonder? How many people do I have to thank for being on this program with you today? Whoever made the computer, whoever made my clothes. I mean, whoever made my glasses. That there's that sense of, how can I say that I am alone in the world, and how can I be selfish? And I think poetry is particularly good at doing this, because what it does, it takes one moment and it just blossoms as a flower, and it allows you to look into that beautiful space. And then I believe that the more people see that goodwill, that sense of gratitude, the more we're willing to talk about why we see things differently and how we think we should govern ourselves as people. This is where the political power of poetry is for me,
Oh, well, that's very interesting. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back with some of Carmen's poetry. Thanks for joining us on World Anchors Network.
I'm at that age where I appreciate every sunrise, sunset, and all the hours in between. The age that causes me to notice the rhythmic timing of each breath. A reminder to thank God for granting me another day. I'm at that age where joints begin to stiffen, and maybe I don't move as fluently as I did at 22. But I'm also at that age where I realize many didn't even get to see today. So I pray on bent and aching knee, thank you, God, for blessing me. I'm at that age where I notice my kids making some of the same mistakes that I did. And I remind myself that although never easy, I made it through, and so will they. I'm at that age where I understand that money never buys true happiness. But I'm also at that age where I understand it definitely does help to have a bit. I'm at that age where six-pack abs still attract. But I'm also at that age where the behavior of a true gentleman will stop me in my tracks. I'm at that age where I know what it means to be a woman alone with how to treat my man. Beginning with listening as he explains what he needs from me. You see, there may be many similarities, but all men are not the same. I'm at that age where I realize good things don't come to those who wait. They go to those who educate, plan, sacrifice, work, and repeat over and over and over again. I'm at that age where I appreciate spending time with family, whether we're on good terms or not. Because I'm at that age where I'm losing so many people that I care about. I'm at that age where I'm bearing down on that age where there are more chapters of my life in past instead of future tense. But I'm at that age where I refuse to give up. I continue to climb, to create, to improve, love, and share, bearing my soul to the universe while honoring my ancestors, my God, and myself, while becoming the best version of me possible, because I'm at that age.
That was Dion Hunter with I'm at That Age. Thank you, Dion Hunter, for your wonderful work, your spoken word performance. So, Carmen, would you like to read us some of your own work?
Yes, that was a very beautiful poem, and I think you just you did a wonderful job of just bringing all the themes that we were talking about to the table. So let me read what I want to do, because it's a nice coincidence. I have here my new book of poems, Time Being, coming out in March. This one it's a poem that I wrote exactly on a date, 25 February 2021. It was a poem about waiting for spring, so I'll start with reading that one. Waiting for spring. Under the last of the snow, the trees wiggle their roots. The warming sieve awakens branches and their twigs that stood numb with cold for months. Last evening before supper, half a dozen young deer galloped through the yard, their sound a surprising stampede of happiness. Booming birdsong, as if the hearing itself has sharpened in our bodies, and windows are raised, doors flung open, our eyes train on imagining new buds. But it is fraught, all is fraught this spring, when the mind rushes everything in to offer consolation. When the blue jay is perceived to have arrived to cheer us up. We have not left the island in 1 year. No one has crossed our threshold. We remained closed in the house. The way trees seem dead in winter. 500,000 dead. Who can count on the accuracy of the number? The earth groans with the cadavers of those who last year went about their worries, with notepads filled with things to do, bills to pay, families to feed, just when the world came to a halt.
Sorry, somebody's been calling me.
The one other poem I would like to read is a poem that celebrates the 30th anniversary of my family's immigration to America. This is because we've been talking about my background. On this day, we send our love. 31 years ago today, the other end of the world stung as if we were looking directly into the sun. Since then, we learned to look at the sunlit ground. On this day, we send our love to those who are scaling the wall, those who are stepping on a precarious raft, those who are hiding in the boxes stacked on a truck. We know it isn't play or malice that make you take this road. On this day, we send our love in our hope that you will land as we did on the verdant earth among welcoming people. The ground has fallen from under you, we know, just like the road vanished from under our feet. On this day, when we recall those first days of freedom, we send you our love, for you will need every kind word.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you. Would you like to read another one?
Yes, do I have time for another one?
Sure. I think we can get one more in.
All right. So let me read. There's a poem that I wrote for my daughter. It's called Waterways. And again, this is bringing the seas together. This is bringing the water together. This is for Alisa, who shouted, "Mommy, I keep losing your steps." The water is writing on sand many drafts of the same story, one more shimmering than the next. I go there to memorize their turns and feel their calling power, wrestle with their yeses and whys. I get involved, make footnotes on some pages. The ocean erases them impatiently, offering shells the size of my feet. Shh, it says, now listen. My daughter says the clouds try to bloom above the water, white hydrangeas, but the water pulls them down. Clouds are children of the water, I say. It's hard to let go of children. Under the bridge this morning, the river passes for a mirror half fogged over. Visions and revisions touch its surface as we look on. Mommy, my child says, the clouds caress the water. A white hawk appears above us, held up by the warm breath of the earth. The tips of its wings recall silver lining, gliding out of view like a thought hard to call. So in fact, I am in her room. I'm recording this from her room. That's why I wanted to read a poem in her, celebrating her.
I especially love the opening passages. It's just me, really interesting, that writing on the sand and, rewriting the story, because it gives you a sense of timelessness, almost like, Shelley's Ozymandias or something, like that there's this timelessness to things that that the empires don't really matter, that there's a timeless story being told throughout nature and throughout humanity. It's something that's being lost when we focus on the particulars, I think. And, we talked a little bit about some of that, in the spirit of nature and how it dignifies, our views of ourselves and history and things like that. I want to appreciate Opiana Adesina from Nigeria for being our regular viewer today. So thank you so much for watching the program. So was there anything you'd like to say in conclusion? We have just a few more minutes, but any message you'd like to impart to the viewers and to writers out there, and scholars, thinkers, anything that you have that you'd like to just anything you would like to say, words of encouragement?
So if I have anything to say, especially in the current context, that we are very much in another in another of the many traumatic moments now, with Russia having invaded Ukraine. I can't help it but return to some of my old memories because it's so close to my own country, to Romania. But I would like to say that we must trust in language. That language is all we have between us when everything else falls apart. And I think that language is the way we should throw these nets of trust between one people and another people, between one country and another country. So let's look at the way we talk to each other. Let's look at the words we choose as sources of strength. And I have in one of my poems, I have this idea that words can be like bridges, that when they are spoken with truth and with clarity, they can withstand the hardest winds and the biggest tempests. So really, really just let's trust the words and let's try to use the best words we can find to take ourselves into some kind of clarity and peace.
Wonderful. That's some wonderful sentiment. I really like, the thought you present there. So would you like to say any thank yous or give any shout outs at the end here at the program?
Yes, I mean, I would like to give a shout out to my friend Pramila Venkatesan, who told me about your show. She is an extraordinary friend of poetry here in Long Island, and a wonderful poet herself. I'd like to express a sense of gratitude that we are, and I am here still talking after the COVID pandemic, and to express gratitude to everybody who has helped us get through these years. And I know there's a lot of pain still going on, and a lot of uncertainty out there. And finally, just to say, language is a beautiful thing. And the more of us grab at this beautiful, you can see it, the petals of language, use any metaphor you want, partake from the bread of language, you could say, grab from the vestments of the language, however you look at it. But the more of us come together to look at hopeful words, I think the more hope I have for my own children.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being on the program today. And thank you to Siddiqui Flory. He said, very beautiful and powerful writing, sister. Truly enjoyed your work. Thank you so much for your comments, Siddiqui, on today's program. And thank you again, Carmen, for being with us today. It's been really pleasant talking with you, and I hope you have an excellent day. And if you have any writers you'd like to suggest to us, just send them our way. We'll get them on the program. Any writers, scholars, musicians even, artists, and anybody that wants to talk about their creative process. That's what we like to do. So thank you so much again.
It will be my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So this has been World Inkers Network, and I'm Dustin Pickering. And you guys out there, you know what I usually say. If you have any donations, any extra money, you can donate at paypal.me/nyparrot. That's paypal.me/nyparrot. Any donations at all are accepted. And we'd love to hear from you guys as far as comments or questions or anything you want to say about the program. Just let me know. Just talk to me about it, and I'll definitely be interested in hearing. You can leave comments and subscribe, like, share, and comment to on our program. Today's program was really fun and interesting with Carmen Bugan, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you want to be on the program at some point, you're a writer or a scholar or an artist, a musician, any kind of creative mind, send a paragraph bio and a headshot with samples of your work to literarycorner@newyorkparrot.com. We want to hear from you really soon, so just get on that right now if you have a chance. Thanks for watching today, everybody. For our viewers and our subscribers, remember, we're looking for 1 million subscribers, so keep getting subscribers for us. Don't forget to share this content. And you guys out there, if you're holding your pen and you're holding it hostage and you can't think of what to write, just get up and just start writing, and have a great afternoon. Dustin World Inkers Monthly Magazine is a fine source for your literary interests. It's an all-source magazine with poetry, prose, and essays and articles, as well as interviews. It's all full-color art and photography from a variety of voices and artists. You will find this magazine entertaining. This is an all-purpose readership, and we are looking for new voices. This sleek, full-color edition of World Inkers Monthly magazine will be something pleasant for your eyes as well as for your mind. And we're looking for authors for one book promotion in the magazine. If you're a business, we want to promote your business. You may submit your book reviews, your academic or non-academic articles on the humanities and the arts, as well as your literary writing and creative output to publication.worldinkers@gmail.com. World Inkers Monthly Magazine does not spare any ink. Keep inking for World Inkers. Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivecchio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivecchio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University. Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you.